Just a wing beat from the Southern Ocean, the Melbourne suburb of Albert Park is ready to mark the beginning of the 2012 Formula One season. Assembled here in Australia for the first time, 6 current or former world champions with 14 drivers' championships between them, and each of them has won this race before on at least one occasion. Australia starts a season that will see their cars and teams travelling all over the globe, but this is a particularly popular racetrack. Around Albert Park, roads that are used throughout the year as a cut-through of this part of Melbourne. But David, what is it about this circuit that makes it special?
Well, it's a temporary circuit, and the rest of the year they'll be parking up cars here. There'll be people enjoying the park at a much more sedate speed than we're going to see this afternoon. And because it's a temporary circuit, of course, the rubber isn't built up over different races in the rest of the season. And that means that there's a big evolution, a bit like Monte Carlo in that respect, a little bit like Monte Carlo in the respect that make a mistake and there's only 2 or 3 corners here where there's serious runoff. On the rest, you're going to make contact with the arco.
Well, it's a stunning day, isn't it? A bit of cloud in the sky. We've got a track temperature of 29 degrees. Air temperature is 22 degrees. And we're only 3 kilometres south of the central business district of Melbourne. And this park, which is used for all sorts of sporting activities this weekend, is just packed with people, of course. There were over 80,000 people here on Saturday. Expected to be over 100,000 people here today. 23,000 people have got grandstand seats. But all of that is temporary, of course. It all gets taken away in about 4 or 5 weeks. It'll all be completely different here, and as I say, it goes back to its normal day use. The hospitality areas above the pits, for example, are netball courts and 5-a-side football courts for the rest of the year. Down on the grid, Sam Michael in his new role at McLaren, Adrian Newey, of course, at Red Bull, and all of them really wondering, have they got their sums right?
Well, certainly we know that the qualifying lineup has given us a little bit of a change from what we've been used to over the last couple of years. As you see Sebastian Vettel there, one last little thumbs up to his engineer. Would probably have given him some information there, and rather than flicking on the radio, he would just use some hand signals. Marco Webber there getting his gloves on. I used to love this moment. You know, this is the moment where you're building up to when the team walk away from you. And, you know, then suddenly you have all of the hopes of your team, the supporters around the world on your shoulders.
And you like that feeling? It
was a great feeling of responsibility, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's presumably the reason why we saw Michael Schumacher go out of the shot. You know, he's come back for that feeling. It's not just about driving the cars.
Well, there is Romain Grosjean, one of the stars of qualifying yesterday, no doubt about that. And there up front, the 2 McLarens, of course. Jenson Button has qualified in 2nd place, but it is an all-McLaren front row to the grid because Lewis Hamilton, with that 1 minute 24.9, has taken pole position. This is how they line up for the start of the Australian Grand Prix then. Hamilton and Button on the front row together. The 2 teammates for McLaren behind them, Grosjean and Michael Schumacher, his best qualifying in his return to Formula One. The 2 dominant Red Bulls the last couple of years, well, they're 5th and 6th on the grid. Webber ahead of Vettel, then it's Nico Rosberg and Pastor Maldonado in the Williams. Nico Hülkenberg for Force India ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, the Australian, 10th. His teammate Jean-Eric Vergne is 11th, and Fernando Alonso only 12th ahead of Kobayashi and Senna. Sauber versus Williams. Then Paul di Resta a bit disappointed with 15th, and Massa only 16th in his Ferrari. 17th, returning world champion Kimi Räikkönen in the Lotus. He's up against a fellow Finn, Heikki Kovalainen, in the Caterham next door. Then Petrov and Glock, and it's Glock's 30th birthday today. Charles Pic is 21st on the grid. Sergio Perez is 22nd and last, and there are no HRTs. They didn't manage to qualify for the race. There is the scene on the grid then as it begins to clear now as we're into that sort of final countdown to the start of the formation lap. Let's listen into some radio.
Tyre information so far. All cars we've seen are on the option tyre. Ferrari's still a question mark on them, but we believe they are also option.
Front runners, of course, the top 10 have to start the race on the tyre, the actual tyre that they qualified with yesterday. But after the top 10, the teams have the ability, if they want, to start on a different compound of tyre. They have that choice that they can do whatever they like, basically, at that point. But up front, they have to stay with the tyres that they used in that final qualifying session. The work of over 4,000 people within the teams, as well as hundreds of suppliers from the outside world, is now in the hands of 22 determined and very fired up drivers all theoretically going for a perfect start to the season. We've had some answers in qualifying as to how things might work out, but David, which teams do we really think have conquered the off-season?
Well, no question that McLaren have learned from the trouble testing that they had pre-season last year, and they've come here very solid winters testing, great reliability, and they've rewarded themselves with a lockout on the front row. But what I take so much encouragement from is that if you actually look at the qualifying session, there was no one team dominated each of the sectors around this lap. We had McLaren fastest in the first sector, we had Mercedes fastest in the second sector, and then Romain Grosjean, and he's come back to Formula One, quickest in that last sector.
We're looking at the tyres that are being used this weekend, and it is, if you take a look, they'll soon disappear, some of those. It's the medium and the soft of the dry weather tyres. So the white writing on the outside means the harder of the two tyres that are being used this weekend. The yellow is the softer of the two tyres. Of course, hopefully we're not going to be using either the intermediates or the wet. Now, it is a street track, this. It's not typical of all the Formula One circuits around the world, but a little interesting statistic for you. Only twice in the 16-year history of Albert Park has the car that started on pole position not gone on to be the car the world champion of that year drove. So Jenson Button took pole here in a BAR and didn't go on to win the World Championship that year. And Mika Häkkinen took pole here in 2000. And 2000. Michael Schumacher went on to win the championship. But it bodes well, doesn't it, for the McLaren guys?
It does indeed. Both their drivers have won around this racetrack. Lewis Hamilton looking absolutely the Lewis Hamilton that we were used to at the beginning of his career. 2011, a distant memory. It's all looking forward. And here he is, he's got full sight of how to prepare his tyres, his brakes. He'll be doing some final burnouts and clutch setting. And look at that, just a little bit of acceleration to do the last preparations as he runs up to the grid.
So as Nicole watches on, let's just tell you what that grid lineup is. Lewis Hamilton starts on pole, Jenson Button alongside, Romain Grosjean outstanding in third, Michael Schumacher is fourth, Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel fifth and sixth, Nico Rosberg is seventh in the Mercedes, Pastor Maldonado is next up on eighth place. We're looking at the tyres, Petrov there on the medium tyre, Hulkenberg and Ricciardo are on row 5, so Hulkenberg in the Force India is 9th, Ricciardo, the Australian, is 10th. Jean-Eric Vergne is 11th, then Fernando Alonso 12th, then it's Kobayashi and Senna, Di Resta and Massa 16th, Raikkonen is 17th on the grid with Kovalainen 18th, then it's Petrov and Glock, Pique and Sergio Perez brings up the rear. No HRTs on the grid, they failed to qualify for this first race of the season. That means we have 22 instead of 24 cars ready to take the start. It's a 58-lap Grand Prix here in Australia. Sergio Perez just moving into place at the back there. The Marussia also moving into place just ahead of him of Timo Glock. It looks as though the grid is all ready and set. So now we're going to watch those lights and watch the countdown to the start of the first race of the season. Hamilton versus Button off the front row. Lights out, away we go. Hamilton and Button going for the first corner, and Button has got a good start, but Hamilton side by side with him into the first corner. Jenson Button is ahead. Button takes the lead. Hamilton is taking. We've got cars off in the background already. Oh, and so common here. We've got cars spinning. I think that might have been Senna caught up in that. We'll have to take a look at that in a moment. Alonso got through there cleanly, but Button leads from Hamilton. Schumacher's third, and Rosberg is fourth. Great start by two Mercedes, particularly Rosberg up from seventh.
Well, we saw that so many times last year that the Mercedes is a fast starter. You know, when we spoke with Jenson Button before the race, he said he was going to go for it. That's exactly what he's done. And let's just keep an eye on whether they're going to get that incident cleared away at turn 1. Otherwise, we could be seeing this safety car being deployed. There's a high percentage of safety cars around this Melbourne circuit, so let's just keep an eye on that. Now
Alonso battling away with Pastor Maldonado in the Williams there. Pastor Maldonado qualified brilliantly well yesterday. He loves street circuits, always goes well at tracks like Monaco, but Fernando Alonso in the Ferrari, tucked right in behind the Williams, trying to get alongside up into turn 11. Not really going to happen there, and now into the fastest, one of the fastest corners. Look at Alonso's car.
We're going to get damage, right? We're going to get damage.
Webber's got damage, but one other bit of news for the race fans: the sector is clear, sector 1 is clear, so there will not be a safety car. But Mark Webber, let's just try and see if we get sight of the front of his car and judge how much damage is there. how it's going to affect his performance. As you see Massa running wide in the exit of turn 14.
Yeah, he's having a bit of a battle at the moment. Did he get through? He's still there anyway at the moment. He's in 10th place, battling with Kobayashi. Button leads Hamilton by 1.3 seconds. Michael Schumacher third. Rosberg under attack from Vettel. The debris flag being shown. That's probably for bits and pieces after the incident down there at turn 1. So Vettel is 5th. Grosjean is the one who lost out at the start, David. He started 3rd, but he's all the way down in 6th place now.
Well, indeed, we've got Senna in the pit. He's obviously got some damage there. There's a McWilliams boy servicing his car. Hulkenberg, also the big loser in that, managed to qualify in the top 10. And Mark Webber dropped down to 9th there. Doesn't seem to find any luck in his home Grand Prix. But meanwhile, we're hearing that Bruno Senna had lost tyre pressure, so clearly picked up a puncture in that contact. But out front, the battle is going to be Button knows he has to brake, as we see defending there. Vettel round the outside. Will they touch?
Oh, wow.
Beautiful driving from both of them there, because that is not a corner to go side by side.
I was amazed. I wasn't expecting an attack there, but Sebastian Vettel has taken 4th place.
Oh, so many times last year people said, can Vettel race? We know he can win, as we see. I think that's Hulkenberg's car being parked up there.
It is.
At the back. But people asking, can Vettel race? Well, that was some really good stuff there.
So Vettel's on the attack. So is Maldonado trying to get past Grosjean. Oh, the two youngsters. They go side by this damage.
Suspension damage. He's out.
Broken the right front on Romain Grosjean's car. Oh, he was so brilliant in qualifying yesterday. And the race is over already for him. And we are losing several cars already in the early stages of this race. Alonso, meanwhile, has got past Maldonado, who's still being chased by Webber. So Alonso will come past us in 7th place now. Button leads. Hamilton 2nd. Schumacher 3rd. Vettel now 4th, Rosberg 5th, and there is a bit of an attack from Mark Webber on Maldonado.
Well, Mark Webber will be in the DRS zone, but crucially up front, Button's managed to open up a gap of 2.2 seconds, so he's out of that DRS zone. That gives him some comfort over his teammate Lewis Hamilton, and DRS obviously not giving too much of an advantage there to Mark Webber. The speeds of the Red Bulls through qualifying were actually 10 kilometres an hour slower than the McLaren and that of the Mercedes.
Let's take a look at the start then, David, and see how the incident, particularly the back. Look at Rosberg.
Absolutely hooked up that start straight past Webber as he came down, and then look at that clean stuff from Button. Lewis Hamilton had to make way, and then Rosberg was round the outside, as we see one of the Toro Rossos.
That was Verne going off, but that seems separate.
His teammate came to contact with Bruno Senna.
Ah, did he?
And knocked him round. So
Rosberg was pretty close, nipping through there, but as you say, up front, Button just had enough, didn't he?
Well, let's look at the concertina effect. Yeah, he gets tagged from the rear end, and then it all kicks off from there. So unfortunately, it's a lot tighter running into that corner when you've got a bunch of cars.
It wasn't a great start by Grosjean, was it? Look, he went from 3rd. You could just see the cars pouring past him.
Yeah, and then he actually has a little bit of contact there with the rear end of the Red Bull. See it from Mark Webber's point of view.
He started in 5th place, remember, and certainly lost time.
Look at that. Rosberg, he would have got the car hooked up, then deployed curves above 100 kilometres an hour to get that extra 180 horsepower, excuse me. What was he thinking? Both of the cars that came around Webber just sandwiched them together, and very lucky not to sustain more damage.
This was with Ricciardo in the Toro Rosso. Now, we saw Hulkenberg there. He was the one that got hit, was on the outside in the Force India. Oh, and up and out, up in 2 wheels for a moment went Senna.
Before that, Ricciardo, he just went right into the back of Raikkonen, I think it was. Let's just have a look at that. So, unfortunately, a bit of inexperience there, but it is a very tight run into that first corner, and there's pretty much one line. You see a replay of the coming together here of Grosjean and Maldonado, and unfortunately, I've got to say, the pass was done, and Grosjean should have got out of the power there. Maldonado, he's got in front of his car past Grosjean, and at that point, you're unsighted as to where the car that you've overtaken. So you just got to do the sensible thing and lift out. And meanwhile, up front, Button seems to be controlling things here quite nicely, as we see Vettel honing in on Michael Schumacher.
Yellow flag still up there for the area that Romain Grosjean's car went off. Presumably they've nearly finished picking that up. But as you say, Vettel is catching Michael Schumacher in the moment in the battle for 3rd place. Button's advantage is 2.4 seconds over Hamilton. The two McLarens running strongly up front currently, but Vettel is chasing Michael. Rosberg is in 5th, Alonso 6th, Maldonado is in 7th in the Williams, Webber 8th place for him, 9th for Massa. So actually, Felipe Massa's sort of benefited a little bit with some of the other incidents around him. Perez is 11th, and Kimi Räikkönen, by the way, is now 12th. So if you just look in the background, you'll see the black and gold colours at the Lotus. Started in 17th to Kimi Räikkönen. He is now, there he is, in 12th position in this race. Paul Di Resta is chasing him.
Well, we need to look out and see if he's sustained any damage as he gets very wide on the exit of turn 2. He'll be within the DRS zone, so he would have opened that up early. We get quite a balance shift as you reduce the drag on the rear. Gary Anderson will be able to give us some more information on that later, but we believe it's around 160 kilos of load that's taken off when you open up the DRS.
Oh,
got,
and
one of the Williams
Maldonado.
Maldonado running wide.
It is from 7th place. So that's really disappointing, because he was having a great run in the top 10 there, wasn't he?
That's right. Well, last time they drove these cars, they would have had about 10 kilos of fuel on board in qualifying. They would have gone off the grid with about 160 kilos of fuel for the race this afternoon. So that's why you'll see the lap times are several seconds slower.
Let's find out a bit more about that, David, with Gary in the pits. Gary, what can you tell us about the sort of prospective strategies that we're going to see in this race now?
Well, I think this is one of the warmest days we've had, and obviously the tyres like the temperature to get up to the working area very quickly. I think, you know, the tyres will last a bit longer here than everyone's expecting, just because the track will rubber in as it goes. It always happens here, always gets better. So I expect people, you know, will aim at doing a 2-stop race. Probably look at a 3-stop if the tyres go away too quickly. So I think you're going to have to just live it on the pit wall.
Sorry to interrupt, but Vettel going off there at turn 1, gets it back on again.
And he'll be susceptible to Rosberg, who was only 2.1 seconds behind them. So there he is.
There's Rosberg, great spot there, David, and he's still battling with him, and meanwhile Alonso's going to join in as well. This is fabulous stuff. Vettel just fends off Rosberg, but now Alonso's breathing all over the back of the Mercedes. That Ferrari trying to make some progress. He might have qualified 12th, but Alonso's 6th and fighting here, and behind them, of course, it's still Mark Webber.
Well, this is a sign of how hard they're having to push in that Red Bull, the advantage they've enjoyed over the last couple of years, seemingly struggling to find the form around this Albert Park circuit. And good recovery there from Vettel. That's put Rosberg a little bit under pressure with Alonso, as we're going to see a replay here. Would have lost a bit of downforce running that close to Michael, and as he's turned into the corner, he's lost the rear, had to correct, and very lucky to get away with that. He was here from the driver's perspective. Now that's in exactly the zone where you're running in the dirty air of the car in front. Turbulence. You know, imagine when you're sitting on an aircraft and you go through the wake of another plane or a cloud, it starts to shake the whole aircraft around. Pretty much the same thing happens with the race car, and you lose downforce.
So a moment, no doubt about it, for Sebastian Vettel, but he's sorted it out and has continued at a good pace. So, as you say, he's pulled away again from Rosberg, who's under pressure from Alonso. And actually, you know, Ferrari's doing better here than I thought it might. It's hanging on to the Mercedes. It's staying in front of Mark Webber in the Red Bull. So all this dire talk about the about the Ferrari, and actually they're running okay. Massa is in 8th place as well, and his times aren't far off.
Well, he'll be breathing a sigh of relief on the Ferrari pit wall, because qualifying was pretty much the worst thing we've seen from him in recent years. But this is a good comeback from them, and lap times are encouraging. They're only about 1.2 seconds slower than our current leader, Jenson Button, and that's significantly better than the pace they were showing in qualifying.
So it is all change at the moment.
Lenny Kravitz there, just performing down here in Melbourne. He's been down, actually. You often see celebrities at Formula One, but they tend to come in for one day, have the photographs in the world media, and then disappear. That's the second time I've seen him at the track. So Lenny's obviously a race fan.
Obviously keen. Jenson Button still leads as he's completed lap 6. We're on to lap 7 out of 58 now. Button's advantage is 3.3 seconds. There's then a 5.6 gap back to Michael Schumacher, and then you've got Sebastian Vettel running 4th. This group then following, because Rosberg in 5th in the Mercedes, just ahead of the Ferrari that we're riding on board with. So we're on board with Alonso. He's in 6th. Behind Alonso is Mark Webber. Up into turn 13. Let's just listen for a moment.
Shift as he came out of turn 15, all indications of a car that's not able to put all the power down on the road. As you see, I'm just sort of showing Rosberg, I'm here. Very experienced Alonso, double world champion, loses the back end of the car slightly as he was coming out of turn 1 though. That sees him run wide. He's got DRS on the run down into turn 3, but too far back. Mark Webber at the moment just sitting there probably thinking, right guys, you go for it. Come together and clear the way for me. But that is a strong performance so far from Alonso.
Yeah, it's impressing me. I wasn't expecting him to be fighting quite as hard in this group, but will the tyres last? That is still a question. And yeah, you're just pointing out that Vettel is lapping quickly, isn't he?
Vettel is. He obviously dropped a bit of time when he ran off the circuit, but he's now running 3/10 quicker in that first sector than Michael Schumacher. So the Red Bull does have the pace over the Mercedes at this stage, and all of the talk that we saw through qualifying was that Mercedes had this ingenious system that gave them even more top speed when they deployed the DRS. And of course, you're only able to use the DRS when you're following another car, and only on the start-finish straight and the run down to turn 3. So without it, they not only lose the advantage in top speed, the car behind can use it and pick up about 15 kilometers an hour. So this is going to be an interesting battle when Vettel gets back on Michael Schumacher. But meanwhile up front, Jenson Button. Yeah. This is impressive stuff. I would have expected Lewis Hamilton would have wanted to stay a little bit closer, just to allow, 2-second window is a comfortable window when you're battling at this early stage in the race.
Schumacher still in third, but being caught by Vettel again. There's Rosberg, the bright yellow crash helmet of Nico Rosberg, chased by Fernando Alonso, then Mark Webber. Webber never better than 5th in the Australian Grand Prix. He's currently running in 7th place. And remember, poor Daniel Ricciardo, the second Australian out in Formula 1 this year. First time we've ever had 2 Australians in the field, but he's way down in 20th.
OK, there's information at this pace. We're pulling away from the cars behind at over 0.8 of a second per lap. Gap behind 6 seconds.
Wow, that must feel nice. When you get a message like that, how does that feel?
Well, that's a very important team message, and I guarantee you that Jenson Button has had a similar message. That's a team strategy decision, and I'm not saying that they're not allowing these guys to race. Of course they are, but what they're trying to impart on them is that track position is king in this scenario. You've got to preserve the car. It's early in the season, and McLaren at this stage, with Michael Schumacher holding Vettel, are just cruising away out front.
Well, Vettel's just done a fastest final sector. He is definitely closing on Michael Schumacher again. Second sector time. We were still in the second sector rather than the final one. They're heading through the last couple of corners now, and he's closed that gap up a lot. Now, this is Maldonado with Massa earlier, was it? Let's see what was going on. Maldonado in the Williams.
Well, that's interesting because there's a new regulation this year which effectively says you're not allowed to change your position on the way into the corner through the braking zone. It's a safety issue for the driver. So you take your defensive line and you must stay on that line. And it's questionable whether Maldonado was moving whilst on the brake. So I would be surprised if we get a stewards inquiry. As we see, unfortunately, Romain Grosjean talking to our Lee McKenzie. It's a big disappointment for him.
Schumacher under attack then from Sebastian Vettel. 2 German world champions about to go wheel to wheel by the looks of things. What a great story this is. Sebastian, oh, look at this as well, as we're on board the Sauber here of Kobayashi. Is it Perez? No, it's Kobayashi, I think, battling away with Massa and trying to get through. The 2 Saubers are running absolutely together there at the moment, and as they come through, yeah, it is Perez indeed just behind Massa, then Kobayashi. So the Saubers, they sort of underqualified, I feel, yesterday, David, and now they're beginning to show what they can do.
Well, they had very good testing, winter testing, and were looking very strong. But what's interesting here is we've got Alonso and the other Ferrari doing a 33.8, and I know that Massa's having to defend at this stage, but he's doing a 36.4, and he's looking like he's holding up this entire pack.
Suffer on the rear tires. Start to suffer on the rear tires.
So, what's he...
Blister on the rear tyres, did he say? Certainly he's complaining that he's flung out his rear tyres. Now, we were expecting that maybe the first stop would be anywhere around 18, lap 20, depending on how the circuit rubbered in. But to lap 11, and he's lost his tyres already, well, you can expect a 3-stop from Massa on that basis.
So Vettel getting a little closer still to the back of Michael Schumacher. This is a 1 DRS zone, but this year, what's new?
And Michael Schumacher goes wide.
He's gone off. Schumacher's gone off, and Vettel is straight into third place. Well, he was gifted that, and Schumacher did exactly what Vettel had done earlier, but without the excuse.
And Michael's got some damage. He looks like he's in front wing damage there.
Look at this as well, because Rosberg and Alonso trying to go around the outside of Rosberg. That is for 5th place, but it will be better than that now. It will be for 4th because Michael's in trouble. So all changed suddenly. The battle of the two Germans has been resolved in favour of Vettel, and there is Schumacher going slowly. He bounced out wider, and I think he picked up a lot more damage as a result.
Well, when I saw him at the back of the camera shot there, I thought he'd actually parked it on the left side of the circuit, but something else has gone wrong there on the way into the turn. So maybe he's had a systems failure through the braking phase.
Taking a look.
It doesn't actually look like he made a big mistake on the way into the corner, so I wonder, well, you know, bad to speculate, but he's not locked up. But is that a cares issue? Was there something going on that saw him not be able to turn the car? Well, we'll find out. We'll find out soon enough, but Michael Schumacher was running strong.
And it doesn't look as though he sort of whacked a curb really hard and sort of pulled the front wing off or anything there, does it?
No, there was no visible damage, and as I was explaining, it didn't actually look like he locked up. You know, when you know you've carried a bit too much speed into the turn, you desperately sort of pump at the brake pedal.
Raikkonen's gained another place. He's just got past one of the Saubers. Listen in.
Third gear, basically. Third gear's good now as well. Okay, Michael, copy that, confirm.
Well, they might have copied it, but I struggled. I think it was something about gears. Into the pits comes Massa. We heard that he was already struggling on tyres, and he comes in after only 12 laps.
Well, it's 3/4 stops this afternoon on that basis, a 58-lap race. And this will be vital information for all the teams, because, of course, that Ferrari is not running quite as quick as the front runners, but it'll give an indication. He came in so slowly there. It's almost like he's mentally given up.
Well, he's put the yellow banded tyre on again, so he's gone soft. He's still going to obviously make at least one more stop in this race to run the other tyre. You have to run both compounds of tyre at some point during the race. Button still leads this race, remember, by 3.3 seconds over teammate Lewis Hamilton. Vettel is now 3rd after that incident where Michael Schumacher went off. Sebastian Vettel is in 3rd place, some 10 seconds behind Hamilton. Rosberg is now 4th, Alonso 5th, Webber 6th. Maldonado, despite that little mishap earlier, he's still running really well. He's in 7th place. Kobayashi is 8th. Kimi Raikkonen's up to 9th. And Perez, who was passed by Kimi Raikkonen, but nonetheless, good effort considering he came from the back. Michael Schumacher has made it back into pit lane, but it's end of day for the 7 times world champion.
Well, normally he would want to park that car up in the garage, but clearly the technical issue he's had, he's been able to get it back to the start of the pit lane.
Now we saw that Roman...
We've got Rosberg in the Mercedes again, very early, so that frees up Alonso, and we'll be able to see what can this Ferrari do in clean air.
So let's just watch Rosberg coming in.
60 km/h speed limit. That's why it looks so slow, which you know, it's for the safety of the mechanics, and it's the same for everyone. But we can expect a total time loss in the pit lane to be around 26 seconds, maybe a little bit less if you can have your pit crew service your car quickly.
Let's see where he comes out. Nice bit of clear air, I think. Don't think there's too many other cars around there. So he rejoins. Now, we saw Romain Grosjean go out early on in this race, unfortunately, and Lee was speaking with him just a moment ago.
Oh, Romain, so disappointing for you. Just tell us what happened.
Well, I wish I could have seen you on the podium, but well, the start wasn't pretty good. We need to have a look at what's happened there, and then I think it was Pastor Maldonado break away, managed too late and came to hit my car, broke my front direction, and then the race was over.
Tell us what happened at the start. How difficult was it out there? I know it was obviously your first race back for a while.
Well, the start I wanted to be a little bit careful, but the impulsion was very good, and then first to second gear I didn't want it to shift up. We need to have a look on the data. But this is what it is, and we have a race next Sunday and we'll do better.
So, Kimi Raikkonen still battling away with Kobayashi. Raikkonen gets it a bit out of shape there. He's charging. It's great to see him back in Formula One, and he's on the attack. Perez is behind him in 9th place. But Massa making that early pit stop. Rosberg's come in. Oh, and that was a bit of a slide. That was a bit of a mistake. Raikkonen might have a chance there on Kobayashi. Kobayashi really a bit slow. Can Raikkonen take any advantage? What's going on with Kobayashi? Has he got...
His tyres have probably fallen off the edge. They call it hitting the cliff, and there you go. Into the pits for Kobayashi, and Alonso as well is in the pits. instead of the harder tyres going on there. So he's getting this phase of the harder tyre, which new set of tyres going on there. So that'll negate a little bit of the performance difference. But we expect under normal conditions to be about 2 or 3 tenths of a difference in race trim between the two sets of tyres.
Gary, what can we learn about the timing of some of these pit stops that are taking place now?
Well, for me, obviously, it's very early as well. We predicted last night after qualifying a 3-stop strategy. I think we're going to maybe even see some 4s here. I was very surprised when Ferrari brought Massa and they didn't try the harder tyre just to see the durability of that tyre, but they've at least done that with Alonso now. So, I think everybody's finding their feet. Nobody knows how far these tyres are going. We've just seen how big a cliff face it drops off. The rear tyres just go away so dramatically, and it's like 2 seconds a lap suddenly. So that's why the teams are going to be alert on the pit wall. When that happens, you've got to get in. So I still don't think anybody knows how many stops they're going to do here.
Right, well, OK, that's it. Makes it an exciting race. And Kimi Raikkonen has just set fastest first sector time of anybody. He's currently in 6th place. We're riding with Mark Webber here. He's in 4th position. He's 7.5 seconds down the road from his teammate Sebastian Vettel, who's 3rd, and he's coming in the pits.
That's no surprise. He had a huge amount of oversteer through turn 14, one of the faster corners, taking about 130 miles an hour. So he's using up every last part of these option tyres. And look at that, 60 kilometers an hour, does a tear off, clears his visor and gets himself ready down to first gear.
Of course, 60 kilometers an hour here because it's a street track. Normally it would be a bit faster than that in the pit lane.
Hard tyres going on, or I should say the prime tyre going on.
Yeah, the harder of the two.
It's the medium in the range for Pirelli.
So he's back on his way, but Raikkonen, a good lap on that last lap, a 1:33.0. He hasn't been into the pits yet, remember, and you'll expect now the guys who have been in the pits to start setting the fastest laps.
Well, indeed they will, and Webber slotted out just behind Rosberg. He just went past the vision there, so let's see what times he can deliver. Nice fresh set of primes. He's got one set of primes available, he's put them on now, so he'll get this phase of the race out of the way.
Yeah, that's interesting, but there's not meant to be a huge difference, is there, in the speed, the relative speed between the two compounds of tyre this weekend. There is our race leader, Jenson Button, still 3.4 seconds ahead. No sign as yet of either McLaren coming in.
No, but he's pretty ginger as he's gingerly going through turn 16. So they must be quite close to the limit. It was 3.4 second gap the last time around. Let's just see what Button and Hamilton gap is. 3.5, so it's staying pretty steady. Now, what they need to be careful of as a team is that once your tyres have got to the cliff and they've fallen off the edge, you get a massive advantage if you're the first to pit. Now, under normal conditions, that privilege should go to Jenson because he's the first on the road within that team. So let's just keep an eye on that. If Hamilton was to dive into the pits, he could very easily make up a big chunk of that 3.5 second gap.
Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel is lapping more quickly than the McLarens at the moment. About a second a lap faster on that last lap, wasn't he? A 33.7. So his tyres seem to be holding together extremely well, and he is gradually closing the gap.
Well, he is. Let's just see what his first sector time is. A 31.3. That's 3 tenths quicker than Button's lap. Only about a tenth and a half quicker than Hamilton.
No, Hamilton did a 32.4 first sector. He had a really slow first sector.
Yeah, I was only looking at the tenths. I wasn't looking at the seconds. So Hamilton obviously made a mistake in that first sector there. So that's going to take a bit of pressure off him, off Button. He's going to see that gap open.
OK, gents, so this pace is still good. Cars behind have started to pit for their second tyre. We are in really good shape.
Another message a driver would rather enjoy. Meanwhile, Kobayashi has set the fastest lap in this race in the Salvi. He has been into the pits, remember. Now we are going to see a McLaren pit stop. Now, is this going to be Jenson, do we think?
It should be Jenson.
Yes, it is Jenson. He has entered into pit lane. And as you would expect, the leader gets the priority of the pit stop call. That's partly why it's so important to get in front in the first corner.
It is indeed, and I love it. When we spoke to him in the grid, he said, I'm going to have a go. As we see the Red Bull guys coming out, that'll be for Vettel. And Jenson did have a go, and he's got advantage within the team. And look how tight it is getting out of that pit box.
This is going to hurt Hamilton, because Vettel coming in now is going to hurt Hamilton. He won't be able to get in until the next lap, and it'll all help Vettel try and close that gap up to second position.
Set of softs going on there for Vettel. I believe it was a set of hards that went on the McLaren. So that will be a little bit of an offset in terms of lap time.
That will be interesting, yeah, because we could see a bit of a difference there.
Well, Button will have a new set of hards. What's going on down behind here?
Well, it's just he's come out in front of Alonso, so I was just wondering how that all sort of will pan out.
Rosberg,
yeah, that's right. So ahead of Rosberg, and but Alonso right there with Vettel. That surprises me, but it shows that Alonso has been going pretty well since he's put this second set of tyres on.
Yeah, that is impressive.
Now, Button has got himself out, and he's got himself out ahead of Raikkonen. That's pretty crucial as well. But Mark Webber has just set fastest lap in his Red Bull. This is fascinating because we're still learning so much about the relative performance of the cars in race conditions.
Yeah, let's give it everything these tyres have got now.
So
sometimes we get a delayed radio message, but we know that Lewis will be coming in, if not this lap, the one after.
He certainly lost quite a lot in the last lap. He did a 1:36.4, so it was a slow lap, and it will have hurt him to have stayed out that little bit extra long here. Into the pits comes Lewis Hamilton, and we'll have to wait and see where he comes out relative particularly to Vettel and Alonso. Those guys are all having a great Dyson. I think Hamilton's not going to be a long way ahead of it. He should come out in front of it. Let's watch the stop.
Instead of the medium tyres going on there, the harder of the two tyres, that'll be a new set. Both Button and Hamilton, of course, qualified with the faster of the tyres as Button goes through. Look at that, he's lost a lot of time.
Yeah, and he's going to come out behind Raikkonen. Now Raikkonen comes through.
Still to pit, of course, Raikkonen.
Yeah, still to pit, but there is Vettel. That is really the guy he's racing with, and Alonso. So he's still in front of them by a reasonable chunk there, Hamilton, and a little bit of a lock-up there, indeed, on the right front for him. But Vettel still having to work quite hard to keep that Ferrari behind him, and I'm intrigued by that because the Ferrari, again, looking better than I expected. Mark Webber, fastest lap then, a 1:32.2, but we're a long way off the qualifying pace, and Massa's on the move on Petrov. I think he's just going past there. This is partly through the pit stops because Petrov hasn't stopped yet, so Massa just claiming a position there, and Petrov continuing in the Caterham. Both Caterhams, I think, are still running in this race. Kovalainen, though, down in 17th place. It's Bruno Senna still running, despite that incident earlier on. Meanwhile, there is Vettel just picking his way through the traffic. That's Jean-Eric Vergne he's just going past. The young Frenchman making his debut in Formula One this weekend. Maldonado going quickly in his Williams. He stopped and put the soft tyre on, so that's a very good bit of first sector time there for Maldonado. So the Williams, they've taken a big jump forwards by the looks of things compared to last year. Alonso, he's now got to deal with that traffic. He's trying to get past Jean-Eric Vergne. This has cost Alonso a lot of time, actually. He's been held up here by the youngster.
Well, he's perfectly entitled to go racing at this stage. Let's just look down.
Yeah, Verne's not being lapped. He's not being lapped.
Yeah, he hasn't done his pit stop, so it's not in his interest to move out the way of the Ferrari, but just look at the speed difference there. He's got the DRS open. He won't be able to make the pass into turn one. He's too wise for that, too tight that first corner, but he'll get the DRS effect all the way out through two. Look at that, deploying the curves as well. And this will be a fairly straightforward pass for Alonso, but it will cost him a lot of track time.
Yeah, now he's dropped a fair bit to Vettel. You can see up ahead there. But Alonso does get through. Then it's Vergne, and then tucked in there is Rosberg. Webber's at the back of that group as well as they come past the athletic stadium.
Look how much that's allowed Alonso to break free. So at this stage, Vergne on those older tyres, and as I say, he's entitled to go racing, but just see the influence that has. They were all stacked up, the Ferrari, the Mercedes and the Red Bull, but not anymore.
And on the attack, Rosberg,
for it.
Yeah, he's down the inside, and can he hold it? Just about, although Vergne doesn't want to give it up too easily.
Well, this will help Webber, who will get a run on Vergne.
He's trying around the outside. He doesn't want to get in the way of the Red Bull, but he wants to fight his position as well. Jean-Eric Vergne, he does give way, and he probably did the sensible thing then, making his debut here this weekend, and Jean-Eric Vergne staying out of trouble.
Well, arguably, you would say he's in Toro Rosso to showcase his talents, to try and make a move into Red Bull Racing. So probably a wise move, not getting in the way of the sister team. That said, very impressive debut for the young Frenchman.
Yeah, and it's good. We got 3 Frenchmen on the grid this year. No Italians, though. Seems amazing to have no Italian drivers on the grid. Kimi Raikkonen, and what a great stint this has been, David, because he came from 17th in the grid. There's his teammate Romain Grosjean. These tyres have held up reasonably well, haven't they?
This has been a good performance from the Lotus team this weekend. Kimi Raikkonen, people expected big things, and it didn't work out in qualifying. Grosjean was the star for the team there. As you see,
Hamilton battling with Perez. That is for position, but Perez has not yet stopped. Remember what Sauber did here last year? They only went for one stop, and maybe they're doing a similar strategy again.
Yeah, they definitely would try to do that. That's unquestionably probably what they're doing here. But this is costing Hamilton. He's now almost 10 seconds behind Button.
Yeah, Button has
plays into the hands, allowing Vettel to close that gap. You can see visibly now that's down to about a second.
Yeah, Vettel is in the background in the Red Bull, closing on these two. So you've got the young Mexican, who's now in his second year of Formula One, in the black and white Sauber, chased by Lewis Hamilton, who's in third place. So second, third and fourth, all in shot together here with Sebastian Vettel, the double world champion, bearing down on them.
Well, it must be a good feeling for Perez right now. Started at the back of the grid due to a gearbox change, picked up a 5-grid penalty, and currently, because of the pit stop sequence, finds himself in second place.
But the back end of that car is sliding around, you know, it's going to be tough for him.
Well, he is indeed, and this is the zone where Hamilton's got to try and make use of his DRS. He's within the 1 second activation point, the activation line, or the detection line we've just crossed. He won't be able to make the pass.
Yeah, let's see.
Into turn one, but certainly, well,
here we go.
He is actually. He's going to make the pass into turn one.
Well, he's got the speed and straight past Perez and Vettel. Vettel close behind as well, and surely he's going to use the second DRS zone, which is coming up. Let's ride with him. Watch him do the same as Hamilton, presumably going down the outside into turn 3. No, he can't, because he had the outside, and Perez perfectly justifiably defended the inside, still defends. This is good, clean driving by Perez. No reason he should let Vettel through, and Vettel can't find a way past yet.
Well, what that shows us is the McLaren top speed with the DRS open is 10 kilometers an hour faster than that of Red Bull. So Hamilton easily was able to make the pass down into turn 1, and then on the longer straight where you would expect DRS to really be active, Vettel just wasn't able to make good use. I'm just going to check.
Okay, Jensen, check to Lewis now 11 seconds, but Lewis is now in clear air. Lewis is in free air.
So a bit of traffic there. There's Vettel now, he gets through, so he didn't need the DRS in the end. And Perez very sensibly just stuck to his line. That means we now have Button leading, Hamilton second, Vettel third, Perez still running in fourth place. So I wonder how long he will stay out there. Alonso's catching him now. Gary, where are we in terms of pit stop strategy? What are your thoughts at the moment?
Well, I think it's great. Everybody's on different tyres and everybody's doing different things. The one thing I was surprised about was how late McLaren left it. I mean, we saw their lap times dropping, and then whenever they called Button, and he had lost 2 seconds on that lap, which meant Hamilton had to do another lap, and he lost over 4 seconds. So I think really McLaren were 1 lap, maybe even 2 laps later than they should have pitted. But it's been a very good race, and you know, Vettel there now 1.8 seconds behind Hamilton. It was 7.5 seconds behind before the pit stop sequence. So big error there for McLaren with Hamilton, but they're still first and second, so they've got to go racing.
Well, here comes Alonso. He's trying to do what Vettel failed to do, and again, Perez, he's holding his ground here.
Well, he's perfectly entitled to do that, and this Sauber was very fast in a straight line during the qualifying sessions. Of course, he didn't have the DRS, the drag reduction system available, but nonetheless, Sauber going on the different strategy, as you mentioned, worked well for them last year, but expect Alonso, who's dropped a bit of speed as he was coming off turn 6 there, but certainly around the next sector of the lap, I would expect him to try and make a pass.
Yeah, this was where Vettel was quick coming out of this one, but then Perez is, I tell you what, he drives that car. We know it's not got great grip, but it's a lovely driving style Perez has. He doesn't seem to work the car too hard, and Alonso wasn't able to close up, and behind Alonso's Rosberg, who now might put the Ferrari under pressure in his Mercedes. Then we've got Mark Webber. Maldonado still running in 8th place. 9th place is Felipe Massa. Kobayashi's in 10th. Raikkonen is now in 11th after his pit stop. Di Resta's 12th, then Verne.
Well, good strategic driving there from Rosberg. Of course you want to push to get on the back of the car in front of you, but you especially want to be within a second at this point, as will be Mark Webber there just in the distance. So Alonso will get DRS, Rosberg will get DRS, and is Webber close enough to also, and look at the difference in speed, he's deployed all of his curves. Probably, oh no, Alonso didn't actually use his curves. We have a little marker here down the side, the battery bar.
He certainly
that was full DRS and no curves.
He certainly got close. Here comes comes Rosberg on Perez. Now again, he's got to go down the outside, but he might try and get turned in ahead of the Sauber. Yes, he does. Good. Perez was managing to get out of that. Of course, when you're trying to overtake, that's Hulkenberg, by the way, who's in the pit, sadly, after making an early retirement. We've had 3, in fact, go out of this race already. Our retirements so far are Hulkenberg, Grosjean and Michael Schumacher, but we still have 19 cars running. We're on board with Mark Webber as he runs round in 7th.
This is impressive stuff by Perez. Lap 23, and he's yet to stop as he's just passed by Mark Webber. It's got a question though, his lap time. He's doing 35.2 on that last lap, so they're pretty much committed to that strategy now as we see Alonso breaking free of the traffic from the Marussia there.
Yeah, that's Charles Pic making his debut with Marussia this weekend. Another young French driver, so one of the 3 on the grid, and he's doing a solid job. The new Marussia, as Rosberg just going through there, a car very different to last year's Marussia Virgin, an all-new car, still plenty to do. They only got the car running really here in Melbourne on Friday. Ooh, just squeezing through was Webber there, getting a little tight. So Hamilton's second, 11.8 seconds behind Jenson Button. Button is way up the road, but Vettel is now only 1.2 seconds behind Hamilton. I tell you what, this Red Bull is still a major threat for victory here today. Vettel is going after Hamilton first.
And I'll tell you something else, this Ferrari has got some race pace. Alonso's breaking free, he's opened up that gap 1.7 seconds to Rosberg. Last lap there, 33.1, which is the...
I'm starting to pick up some vibrations. Starting to pick up some vibrations on these tyres. Not from blocking, not from blocking.
Okay, understand.
Well, if he's getting vibration from the tyres and it's not from locking, it could be from a wheel weight. Even though there's, Formula One standards of engineering, you do need to still put a little wheel weight there to balance the wheels. So maybe that's got knocked off during the pit stop. But what I was going to say is we see Jean-Eric Verne gone out on a fresh set of tyres, currently the fastest man on the track. But Alonso's lap time on the last lap there was quicker than Hamilton and exactly the same as Sebastian Vettel. So Ferrari have seemingly overnight rediscovered their mojo.
Well, we saw Michael Schumacher go out of this race with some sort of gearbox problem. He's talking to Lee.
Michael, you ran off wide. Was the damage to the car done then?
No. The damage was in the braking off the way, or on the way, turn 1. And in the moment that you don't have a drive, then you can't basically stop the car properly. I opted to go straight on, not forcing the car maybe into a spin or into something stupid, because I knew already that probably was the finish of the weekend.
I suppose the positive is that the race had been going well up until that point.
We have certainly positive points we take from this weekend, absolutely. Considering where we're coming from last year, the boys in the factory, Mercedes, really have done a fantastic job to get us there. And we never had any issue with the gearbox all winter long, so it's a bit strange. I'm very confident we can fix that easily. The other car is still running, so unfortunately those are prototype cars. It can always happen. You never have 100% security in these cars. Shame, but that's the way it is.
Well, we're watching Kobayashi and Raikkonen here, 9th and 10th places, and that was Raikkonen just getting the 9th place from Kobayashi, I think. We just caught the end of that. Meanwhile, Hamilton's done a great lap. Let's see if we can find out what was going on. Massa initially, Kobayashi and Raikkonen, Ferrari, Sauber, Lotus. Watch Raikkonen, the third of the 3 cars there. What happened next, David?
Well, in the braking zone down into turn 3, you've got the Ferrari holding position. Raikkonen, he said he missed racing. This is what he came back for. And great stuff as he takes the car around the outside in turn 4. I don't think I've ever seen someone do that in this circuit.
That was fantastic, and that's exactly why so many fans around the world are so delighted that Kimi Raikkonen is back. He might be monosyllabic out of the car, but boy, he can race when he's in it, and that's what we love to see. So Kimi Raikkonen is in 9th place now. Massa also going reasonably well in his Ferrari, but Alonso, as you say, running 4th. Behind Alonso is Rosberg and Webber. That's what we just caught sight of there, going through turns 1 and 2. There's Alonso, there is Rosberg. Now, can Webber do anything about getting past that Mercedes just ahead of him? That's the question. It hasn't really looked as though Mark has got a car that's easy to overtake. What tyres of the two of them on? Do we?
Well, we've got Mark Webber on the medium, which is the yellow marked soft tyre. And if I just look down, we've got Rosberg on the soft, which...
so Rosberg, in theory, has got the speed edge in terms of tyres, is he?
Did I read that from the sheet wrong? We've got Mark Webber on the medium, we've got Nico Rosberg on the soft. So
right.
The advantage should be slightly to the Mercedes in terms of the tyres that they're running at this stage. But you get much less of a difference in the Grand Prix than you would get on a new lap in qualifying. Roughly, it halves the difference between the tyres. And no big surprise, if we look at the performance up front from Vettel, that the Red Bull is showing a little bit better pace than the Mercedes at this stage. But Mark Webber running in the dirty air of that Mercedes, and there is a speed disadvantage when you've got the Red Bull versus the Mercedes in straight lines. So difficult times here for Mark Webber, having to be patient with the tyres. You know, you're wanting to push on and try and create an opportunity, but the way these Pirelli tyres are, you've got about 2.5 millimetres of gauge of rubber available before you suddenly lose your little sighter of how much rubber's on top of the belt, and then that's the point at which they fall off the cliff, and the performance drop-off is huge.
Well, Lewis Hamilton's performance is pretty good at the moment. He's just set another new fastest lap. You're looking at the onboard stats from Rosberg and Webber, comparing the two cars, seeing whether DRS is in operation. The drag reduction system on board with Raikkonen. Raikkonen goes past Massa. That's for 8th place, straight down the outside. And Kimi Raikkonen past his former Ferrari teammate. But Massa's struggling, and Kobayashi might get the place as well. So has Massa got a problem or what? Because Kobayashi goes steaming past, and Felipe Massa's now lost 2 places.
Well, Massa hasn't appeared to be at all comfortable with this car all weekend. There's been a bigger gap than there would normally be. You can see Michael Schumacher, yeah, little smile for the camera. And yeah, it seems that Massa has been one of the bigger gaps I've seen between him and Alonso at any time during their time as teammates. So not at all comfortable. He goes to the inside, he takes his defensive position early, and that leaves the way open for a DRS open Lotus, and Raikkonen not race rusty at all. He's loving this.
It's good to watch. There is Jenson Button then. His lead a little bit less because Hamilton's been putting in some very fast laps over the last couple, but it's still appreciable. You can see way back there is Hamilton, so the gap is 9.5. That lap wasn't much different between them. Then you've still got Vettel, and Hamilton really charging, I think, not so much to catch Button, but to stay ahead of Vettel. There is Alonso, a little bit lonely. Rosberg still trying to defend his position from Mark Webber. And Webber doesn't look as though he's going to do anything, but he is on the harder tyre, so that makes his life a little more difficult. Maldonado still running in 7th, by the way, in the Williams, further behind these two. And then you've got Massa. Well, no, of course, you've got Raikkonen now. Blue flag down there, so they're lapping somebody. Yeah, it's Charles Pic, I think, still getting out of their way. And no problems, but again Webber wasn't able to use the DRS zone to his advantage. He still sits behind the Mercedes.
It's actually very difficult to see when the DRS is deployed on that Red Bull. When I was looking on the run down to turn 3, I don't know if it's just because of the colour of the wing or the fact they're running under the trees, but let's just keep an eye and make sure that Mark Webber is getting the use of the DRS.
So just a quick note that Perez, who was running around so impressively for a long time without making a pit stop, he has now made his pit stop, and he's going quite quickly, but he's obviously dropped down the order. We won't really know where Perez is until towards the end of the race when everything sorts itself out. Still nothing to choose between Nico Rosberg in the Mercedes there and Mark Webber. Webber in 6th place at the moment. He's 1 place off matching his several times best finish here in Australia, which is 5th. We've got Vettel lapping quickly again in his chase of Lewis Hamilton. So there's some wonderful dices going on through the field. Button leads Hamilton. We're on lap 29 out of 58 now, so just over the half distance mark. Vettel is in 3rd place. Alonso in 4th place for Ferrari. 5th place is Rosberg. 6th place is Webber. 7th Maldonado for Williams. Raikkonen is in 8th place, and then we've got Kobayashi in 9th, Massa in 10th, and Di Resta there in 11th, and that was Charles Pic.
Massa pits.
Yeah. That was the Mauricio getting out of the way again. Charles Pic just moving out of the way of Di Resta, but as you say, Massa was first in on the first round of stops, and again he's first in this time.
Not getting his tyres to last at all. Meanwhile, back in the battle up front, you've got Mark Webber, you mentioned earlier, running in the dirty air. You know, as a driver, you feel it when you're at that distance to the car in front. You can feel the slipstream effects, of course. There's a creating a hole in the air, and it sucks your car seemingly forward to the car in front, but also in the corner you lose the downforce, pushing the car into the road. So Mark Webber taking a lot out of his tyres at this stage of the race as he tries to find the way past the Mercedes.
That was interesting how he closed up there, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's normally there's an offset in straight line speed between the Mercedes and the Red Bull, but it's almost as if Mark was using his curves in a way to get him up close to Rosberg. We don't have that information, unfortunately, but he's looking a bit closer than he was in the last lap. So
wasn't Rosberg one of the first in as well earlier? Yeah, he was. I think his tyres are beginning to go because he's beginning to struggle again for grip. So
he was in lap 17.
Right.
So he's got 17 laps on this set of tyres. So right in the window where they were starting to wear out the first time round. The first round of pit stops were all around sort of 14, 15, 16 on the laps. Of course, there's less fuel on board at this stage of the Grand Prix. They've burned off about 2.2 kilos a lap. And with each lap, they get a bit more responsive. Right.
Here we go. I wonder if he can use that DRS. No, again, not. And look how Maldonado has caught. That Williams has got Renault power in it as well. But it's looking as though he might be able to catch up here. Let's listen.
Why do I get all the time off back?
Blue flags are for cars behind, Kimi. They're not for you.
What is he talking about?
He's like, why do I get all the time blue flags?
Well, he's unique, isn't he?
He's an update on curves and on DRS. Webber does have full use of it. We had sight of it on that last graphic. That's Maldonado's girlfriend, my neighbour back in Monaco.
Well, he's doing a fabulous job as the Venezuelan, Maldonado. He's caught this group of Rosberg and Webber, and this is such a great return to form for Williams after a miserable season last year. Look at Webber, thought about it. We've occasionally seen moves made at that corner, but also remember Webber himself making a mistake at that very corner a few years ago, and he probably doesn't want to repeat it.
No, indeed, and Rosberg's pace is so poor now, it's allowed Maldonado to get right up the back of the Red Bull. You would never have imagined that they would be in that position after their performance last year. It's great to see Williams Renault performing so strongly around this Albert Park track. But Mark Webber, he's in the DRS zone, but he's catching that point too late to actually make a pass. And Maldonado will have use of DRS down this next straight as well.
Yes, he will. Let's see if there's going to be any change. DRS showing up on our graphic, of course, for Webber, and there is a change. Webber goes to the outside, but can he hold it off?
And Maldonado on the inside.
He's trying to take advantage. Well, that was good opportunism, but he was also sensible because he didn't just barrel in there out of control. So well done to both of them.
Yeah, good clean racing. That's one of the more difficult corners to spot your braking.
Rosberg's moving all over the place.
Understood. We're on it.
Well, he's talking about weaving, is he?
Yeah, he is. Oh, we'll go back to weaving in a moment. Is that Jean-Eric Vergne in the Toro Rosso, drifting rather than weaving, and stuck in a bit of a rut as we're back on board with Mark Webber. Now, watch Nico Rosberg. Is he making one continuous line? He's certainly leaving Webber enough space on the inside. This is going to be mighty brave. Webber backs on.
He's going to go wide.
Rosberg has gone a bit too far and uses the escape road. Now, Jenson Button did the same thing last year, Martin, but he was level with Felipe Massa. What are the stewards going to think about this?
Well, I think that he let his foot off the brakes, was never actually going to make the corner, but of course he was ahead. That's a really difficult call for the stewards as to whether he gained advantage, because he was always ahead, but you could argue easily that he was ahead and he goes in the pits anyway, so that solves that problem. They can't penalise him unless they give him a... Well, he could argue I gave the place back, I was coming in the pits, but yeah, you know, he went wide because he just let his foot off the brakes, basically.
Mark Webber certainly was on the brakes earlier through there, but Nico Rosberg for his second stop of this race so far. The front jackman, clothed rather differently to the rest of the Mercedes crew, lifts his jack out the way, and Rosberg filters in 10th place at the moment. 4.4 second pit stop, not the fastest I'm sure we'll see, but ahead of, or behind I should say, Sergio Perez there.
Yeah, Perez, that's the sort of pace he's doing. Perez has just set the fastest lap of the race with a 1:31.5 and moves up to 10th place. So Nico Rosberg will, if he can catch him, he's got him to cope with. Paul Di Resta then up into 9th place as well at the moment. So that is working beautifully for Sergio Perez. And we'll keep an eye on Webber's pace now. Webber's flying now. He's in clear, absolutely flying. He's 8 seconds behind Alonso, but is putting in some great sector times.
And look at that sight. If you're a Jenson Button fan, that must be absolutely beautiful. As he disappears through turn 1, Lewis Hamilton comes round the final turn. Such is the gap between the two McLarens at the moment, and he's actually increased it, Button, on that previous lap by over a second. Maybe the back markers getting in Lewis Hamilton's way a little bit. We can ride on board with him now. He's in a little bit of cleaner air. Hamilton 2.2 seconds, the gap back to Sebastian Vettel in third.
Rear tyres dropping on fast.
Okay, understood, Lewis. We need to keep going for a few more laps if we can.
Rear tyres are going. As we explained earlier, there's only about 2.5 millimetres of rubber available before you get down to the bottom belt of rubber, which is the point at which they fall off the cliff, lose all that grip. And typically we call this circuit a front-end circuit. To really deliver the time in qualifying, you need to be able to lean on that front tyre. But of course, when you get out there on the race and you're starting with so much fuel on board, it's like getting 2 heavy passengers strapped in the back of the car. And it just takes so much more out of the rear tyres on traction. And at this stage, I don't think that unless Lewis really gets in big trouble, he's not being pressured by Vettel. McLaren are looking like the faster car here. You know, Hamilton's out there on the slower of the 2 tyres, the medium tyre, and we've got Vettel chasing him on the softer tyre. So there should be maybe about 1 or 2 tenths in the tyres at this stage of the race, so underlying the pace of this McLaren.
What was interesting was Hamilton did those very hard pushing laps quite early on this set of tyres, didn't he?
Tyre management has been something we've spoken about all the time now that Pirelli are in Formula 1. They've really helped spice up the racing, and there's something else that would spice up the racing. So the Pirellis have definitely become an issue for the drivers in terms of management. Jenson Button seems to take his tyres on a journey that allows him to go further than Lewis Hamilton. And that's obviously new season. There's some slight changes to these tyres going into the year. They've actually squared off the profile slightly in comparison to last year, and that's brought all of the tyre compounds a lot closer together in the performance. And around Albert Park, it was about half a second tyre to tyre in qualifying, and it's about half that in race trim.
So Button still maintains that advantage. In fact, it's gone up to 10.8 seconds. So again, Hamilton, as we've heard, is struggling a little bit with his tyres. Vettel is still running there in third place. Then Alonso. Perez, we know that Perez is in 9th place. He's only stopped once. He got 1 stop here last year. We do wonder whether he might be able to make it a 1-stop race. We're going to have to wait and see for the moment. But yeah, Gary, what are your thoughts on that? Because we know that Perez managed it last year. Do you really think he can go through the rest of this race?
Well, yes, there's a chance. Obviously, it depends on when that cliff face arrives. And if it arrives on lap 58, it's fine. But if it arrives on lap 50, you might have a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, interestingly, Button Hamilton there, the harder tyres, David was saying, Hamilton's complaining about the rear tyres, but Button, we haven't heard Button complain. Ferrari guys are coming out in the pit lane, so I think we're going to see Alonso. But the harder of the 2 tyres seems to be quite durable, and obviously these guys are trying to go as far as possible just to get it into that 2-stop window, which looks possible now for sure.
Okay, well, Alonso is in, as you say, and let's just watch the Ferrari guys go to work. So we've got
as I said, in the mediums going on there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That is interesting. So Ferrari declining to use the softer of the tyres, the yellow mark tyre. Now let's just check on that. Of course, Alonso has new tyres available, having gone out and not made it through to the last part of qualifying. So he has the choice of a new set of either of those tyres. So is that an attempt to try and make it to the end of the Grand Prix? It would seem they'd be hoping on the track rubbering in, and of course as the fuel mass burns off, the car gets lighter, you take more out of the tyre. So Ferrari had their last stop this afternoon.
Good question. Well, we'll find out, won't we? But Alonso on his way once again, nice and cleanly. Still only seen the 1 stop for our race leader, of course, Jenson Button, who's still got a 10.8 second advantage. There is Sergio Perez, who we're wondering whether he might try and do a 1-stop. He's currently sitting in 9th position. Mark Webber, by the way, setting a good middle sector time. There is Mark Webber, and clear now of Rosberg, because Rosberg made that pit stop, and that shows that the Red Bull is looking after its tyres pretty effectively here, because Mark's able to lap as the fuel is burnt off. his tyres are lasting very well.
Well, just to confirm that, the last set of laps there for Button, 32.2, Hamilton 32.2, and for Vettel, 31.8. So at this phase of the race, the Red Bull does seem to be hanging in there.
This is great because it looks as though we've got cars that are perhaps faster in qualifying, other cars that are looking after their tyres better, and this should make for some tremendous racing through the season. There's Kimi Raikkonen, who's in 6th place now, having made one stop. And the Lotus running solidly for the moment. They had problems in testing, David, where they actually had to pull out of a hole of one of the tests because they had a chassis mounting problem on the car. But once they fixed that, I mean, it does seem a very fast car.
Well, it does, and Kimi Raikkonen's lap there, 31.9, that's just a 10th down on what Vettel did in the last lap. So Raikkonen making good today what didn't work out yesterday.
If it's good for strategy, I can...
Push.
If it's good for strategy, I pit. Well, and all they said was push, so just get on with it.
Well, that could mean push and come in, so let's just watch this, stay on board, and then we've got Button in, our race leader.
So Jenson Button slides it into the speed limit there, which is slower here, as we mentioned, at 60 kilometres per hour than for some racetracks. Second pit stop of the day for Jenson Button, of course.
But Hamilton following him in. This is like a double stop for McLaren. This is going to be a very busy. They've just made it. Great pit work there from McLaren.
And of course, what they have to be careful of in that situation is you put the right wheels on the right car. If you have both sets of wheels out, if you put somebody else's wheel on, if you put your teammate's wheel on your car, you get thrown out. So mechanics have to be careful. We've got a car stopped. Is that a Caterham? I think it is.
It is indeed. That's just a little bit up from our commentary box.
That's a great shame.
Will be a little bit awkward for them to move that car away.
Yeah, petrol has got out of the car.
Well, we'll need to ask Gary whether that smoke is engine smoke or gearbox smoke or water.
Or brake smoke even.
Yeah, I mean, it is the front axle there.
So that's a shame. So Vitaly Petrov joins our list of retirements. Hülkenberg, Grosjean and Michael Schumacher. But the rest of the run is still going.
Not that I want to see a safety car, but we have a safety car.
Oh, that's going to make life interesting. So, who's going to go for the pit stop opportunity?
McLaren have got the advantage here, having just come in and put the tyres on. They're in fresh tyres. Yep. This will be maybe 2-3 laps of running behind the safety car. So, on this sequence, Vettel has lost out.
Oh, interesting. Safety car is out. It comes out as soon as it is called, not necessarily to pick up the race leader.
It's almost as if McLaren sensed there would be a safety car, bringing both cars in at the same time. You don't see that very often.
No.
That shows how confident they are in their mechanics. And here we have Vettel. Is that Vettel making his pit under the safety car?
That's right. Let's
Marussia in front of him.
Gary, what are your thoughts on this? What are you thinking on the timing of the safety car?
Well, could be lucky, could be unlucky. I mean, it depends on how much speed Vettel lost in that last section, whether he lost much lap time or not. He did a 37.0 there, so that's okay as long as they get the pit stop done pretty nippy. He should get back out in the same position because the other guys will be slowing down. He's put on a brand new set of the hard tyres, so he's going to try to go to the end. His first 2 stints were on the softer tyre, so he's done his tyre allocation. But I think it's going to be okay for Vettel there.
Okay,
so that's all about, he almost goes wide in the run down to the first corner. So Gary, what you explained there, it's all about where you are on the track when you come back out before the safety car picks up the leaders. And if he hasn't slotted in behind, if there's a big enough gap to the cars behind him, then he'll line up in the same the same running order.
Yes, he should line up at worst in the same running order. And it would depend because obviously Hamilton and them could have got affected in the last section by the safety car maximum speed lap. Because although the safety car hasn't caught the leader, you're still not allowed to go past the danger zone at racing speed. So we'll just see how it all unfolds. But I'm sure Vettel will be back in the same position.
And the mechanism, Gary, that they use, as we see the Caterham here coming out of the last corner, Petrov obviously deciding whatever it is, he can't run to the end of the pit lane. So that's unusual. Normally you try and clear your car from the track, but anyway, that's what's happened. But the mechanism, Gary, that they use to control the speed of the cars under the safety car, it's a lap delta that's put on the driver's display, and they have to stay within, what, plus or minus a second to control their speed around the lap.
Yeah, they have to control their speed so they're not going at a dangerous speed before they pick up the safety car. So it is a bit of you know, you got to do it. They got a button on the dash that they can press, and they know the speed they've got to travel at. So, button on the radio.
Okay, Jensen, the Red Bull's pace has been very similar to ours, but we have been fuel 4, so we have plenty in hand.
Interesting. We've been, did he say fuel 4? So not running a particularly powerful mode at this stage. They'll be saving some fuel, and they'll be able to turn that engine mode up.
We're also going to see something new in this, David, because at the end of the during the safety car period, before the safety car comes in, and the new rule will kick in that lapped cars will be waved past the safety car. So you won't actually have any lapped cars between the front runners, and there is a lapped car, it's Heikki Kovalainen.
That's right, indeed, and it was something that we did do a few years ago in Formula 1, and then they stopped doing it because they felt it took too long to get everyone back into position. But clearly what it does is disrupt the front runners, you know, the main race that we're seeing here. So once they get past the incident, then we see the Caterham there coming in to make its pit stop. So effectively what that's done, as we see the on-track position here,
yeah, now this is interesting,
the front runners.
Because Vettel has emerged in second. So actually the safety car appears to have helped Vettel, because he comes round in second position. Button is our race leader. Vettel has benefited from that. He's now in second place. Hamilton is third, then Webber, then we've got a lapped car, and then we've got Alonso. So Alonso comes around in fifth place. Now, let's just see what was going on here.
Well, there's a replay of
in the background.
Someone locking up.
Yeah.
So they're powering through, trying to keep some heat in their tyres. And he's powered through turn 14. And of course, everyone's concertinaed up. He's had to get on the brakes. That won't help. You get a flat spot in these tyres, and they're particularly sensitive to balance issues.
Gary,
someone's going to have to explain.
Yeah, well, Gary, I think Gary can explain it. Gary, how did that work?
Well, really, whenever the Caterham pulled over and stopped, Vettel was in the last section heading for the pits. Basically, he didn't have to go past the Caterham zone, so he didn't have to slow down. He could go at maximum speed, because he wasn't going to go across the start-finish line and record the section time that would have made him look as though he was going too fast. He could come into the pits. Yeah. Hamilton had to slow down, because he was going to go across the start-finish line, recording the section time. So, yeah, I mean, just the way the luck of the draw. Maybe if Vettel had been another 500 metres backwards, he would have lost out. But at that point in time on the track, it was just the right time for him.
Just as we thought, Ben. Thank you for that, Gary.
We knew that all the time. So Massa has made a third stop after just 11 laps on mediums. My goodness, they really are getting through the tyres on that second Ferrari. But Alonso is still showing a reasonable turn of pace. We're under safety car here at Albert Park in Melbourne. 38 laps have been completed. We're on lap number 39. Of everybody, the only car at the moment that's made just one stop and hasn't used this safety car period is Perez.
So, Mark, your pace was very good. You were a good half a second quicker than anybody else at the end there. And remember, when we restart, there will be 2 laps without DRS. It's a good opportunity.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment. Good opportunity without DRS. You normally think the drag reduction system helps you overtake, but of course the Red Bull hasn't been looking as quick as the other cars when the rear flap is engaged, as it is in DRS mode, and so they're effectively saying we might be more competitive when we're not using it.
Well, they'll know that for a fact. They were 10 kilometres an hour slower in qualifying in comparison to the McLaren, and I guess we're going to find out just what that offset is. And these 2 laps that they run without the use of DRS, they will have KERS, of course, available. But part of the difficulty when they're running out behind the safety car is harvesting and charging up the KERS system, because they're obviously being controlled to a certain speed.
Well, interestingly, we're just looking at a fantastic view across Albert Park, by the way. Never mind the race and safety car. What a glorious shot of Melbourne. We've also got the sign on our timing screen saying that lapped cars may now overtake, so you'll see the lapped cars now going around past the safety car. They are Kovalainen, Glock and Charles Pic, and they are now going to go around past the safety car and join the back of the queue, which means we'll end up with just all the leaders racing against each other. But I was just about to say about Sergio Perez, you know, he's in great shape here because the safety car will have helped him look after his tyres. If he is there's the Charles Pic just going round to join the back of the queue. If Perez has been able to look after his tyres, which he has under safety car conditions, he really has got a great shot of making it through to the end on this one-stopping race.
Well, it's great tyre management from Perez. Did exactly the same thing here last year. Unfortunately, they found there was a regulation issue with their rear wing, and both the Saubers were taken out and excluded from the results. But Let's not expect any of that this afternoon. But the battle up front is the battle of the two stoppers.
That everyone's trying to get used to the fact that they've got to let these back markers come through. It takes a little bit of time for everybody to sort of make it happen.
Also from a visibility point of view,
yeah.
You know, you want to try and keep your tyres warm, but these mirrors in the car are so small that the actual visibility you have is pretty much just directly behind you. So when you've got someone else, when you're running slowly and they're on a completely different line, you're relying on good communication between the team and...
So yeah, the racers are the leaders are meant to stay on the racing line, but of course they're all busy trying to keep that tyre temperature and stuff.
Yeah, lock up from Webber there in the background. Is you know, these the cars they run in such a small operating window, and the brakes will be up to 1,000 degrees under peak when you're out there running at speed. So very quickly you lose that temperature, and then they become very sensitive to locking up. So the drivers are trying to accelerate, brake, and all the time as well they're trying to save fuel as the follow the safety car here. They're trying to burn the minimum amount of fuel possible so they can use more of the go faster mode later in the race. They systematically start the car under-fueled, expecting to not have to run at full power all the time. They're only allowed a certain number of engines for the season, 8 engines for the season. And you can see Vettel there.
Sebastian, you can use the fuel. You can use the fuel. Burn as much as you can.
Okay, that's a nice signal to hear.
Rehearse the restart in your mind.
Well, Matt, just as we were talking there about the amount of fuel saving they might have done, this is the Kovalainen getting parked up there.
Oh, that's a shame. We've now lost both Caterhams from the race at short order, just after he'd been waved through as well, so that's very disappointing. Kovalainen out of the race, and we've already seen Petrov out as well. We've got 7 different chassis in the top 10 at the moment. That is impressive, that the variety that we've got up there. And Button, of course, leading, but all that nice advantage that he had before the safety car came out has been diminished. Vettel is now going to be the one chasing him. Hamilton's in 3rd. Webber in 4th. Remember, Webber's never finished as high as 4th here in Australia before. Alonso is 5th. Then we've got Maldonado, and let's not forget Maldonado. You know, Williams, we said they're looking at a resurgence in form here, and he's running 6th ahead of Perez, Rosberg, Raikkonen and Kobayashi.
What I think is great about this right now, we've got them in the last phase of the Grand Prix. The cars are getting lighter in terms of total fuel. Top 4 all have fresh tyres. They're all out there on the medium tyre. So this is a straight battle between McLaren, Red Bull, and I wonder if that message to Sebastian about you've got plenty of fuel is as much the a message because they'll know the other teams are picking that up. So is that just to sort of scare McLaren into using up another engine mode?
The lights are out on the safety car, and Jenson Button is preparing to get this race back underway. But it's now Sebastian Vettel behind him. He took full advantage of that safety car. Lewis Hamilton's got some work to do to reclaim 2nd place. Mark Webber's there in 4th. Then it's Alonso, followed by Maldonado in the Williams. Then Sergio Perez, who we think might be trying to go through on a one-stop strategy. Rosberg, Raikkonen and Kobayashi complete the top 10 as we come down to the last couple of corners, and Button will dictate the pace, and off goes Jenson Button. He's on it straight away out of that last corner. Great restart by Jenson Button, absolutely flat out straight away across the line. Vettel now will be under pressure from Lewis Hamilton. Mark Webber chasing them both as well, and they can't use DRS for the next lap or two because every time you restart the race the DRS is not enabled, so it's down to pure racing and trying to get past the guy in the normal way. Hamilton is going to try and close that gap up to Vettel.
Yeah, Vettel seemed to be caught napping a little bit as Button let rip through the last corner. You know, he kept everyone nice and tight through 15, and then when he opened it out through the last corner, then Vettel was under a bit of pressure from Hamilton. That gap's just opened out slightly as they run around the back of the circuit, but Jenson's gone.
He has. Another amazing restart from Jenson Button, like the start of the race when he was able to get past Hamilton into turn 1. Watch the others come through. Alonso in the Ferrari there, chased by Maldonado in the Williams. Sergio Perez in the black and white Sauber tucked in behind. Then it's Rosberg, Raikkonen. Although Raikkonen, just having a look at that, I think Kobayashi's got ahead of Raikkonen. So there might have been a change around there. Behind Raikkonen is Di Resta. And then Massa coming through in his Ferrari. He's still behind Jean-Eric Verne. Bruno Senna is in 14th place. Daniel Ricciardo is in 15th. then it's Timo Glock and Charles Pic, our only remaining runners. Let's see what happens. Yeah, this is Kobayashi going past Raikkonen.
Down the outside into turn 3. Now, Kobayashi was so impressive in his debut in Formula 1 as sort of the overtaking king in Suzuka, and once again pulls a pass around the outside into turn 3. Very difficult corner to do that, but brave stuff from the Japanese driver.
Especially on Raikkonen, who we've seen already today is in fairly feisty mode, but he gave him racing room, which is what it's all about. Button opening up a 2.5 second advantage over Vettel at the moment. Great first lap after the restart as well.
A very impressive run from Jenson Button, who's seemingly absolutely confident in this car. Tricky after a period of being behind the safety car to know exactly where you can position the car under braking and just how much grip you're going to have from the tyres, but at this stage of the race, Button just looking supreme.
Well, there is Maldonado, who's also proving to be one of the stars. Alonso was a little bit wide there, wasn't he, in the Ferrari? But the Ferrari's up there in 5th place, and we weren't really expecting that. He did say after qualifying yesterday his goal was top 10 first and top 5 would be fantastic. Well, he's in 5th place, and that is much more than perhaps they expected. But the Williams behind, I tell you what, Williams were talking to us earlier today saying they really feel they've got a chance of beating Ferraris on current form, and Maldonado's tucked in behind Alonso.
Well, the key thing was the difference between Williams this year so far and last year is that they genuinely feel that they can race where they qualify. And in the case of Maldonado, that was well inside the top 10, and what a difference a year makes. Williams on the comeback trail. Ferrari, I take my hat off to them remaining calm after what was a very, very disappointing qualifying session yesterday, but the whole team stayed tight, and Jenson Button, a 30.5 fastest lap time out there, unsurprisingly, as he runs in clean air. But yeah, the Ferrari team are remaining tight. Alonso seems to be entirely comfortable within that team despite their difficulties right now, and that's exactly what the driver's responsibility is, to stay calm in difficult times.
Well, there is Maldonado then, the Venezuelan, keeping Fernando under pressure, so he is keeping calm, Alonso, but he's still got to watch out for Maldonado in the Williams Renault. So Button up ahead from Vettel and Hamilton. Hamilton still trying to reclaim that 2nd place, but he's got to think about Webber behind him as well. DRS will be up and running again when they come around now, so we'll have to see if that makes any difference. We've got Kobayashi.
Oh. And the speed is coming off. They'll turn on it and it's not very safe.
Sauber rear wing is broken.
Understood, Kimi, understood.
That's got to be a worry.
Well, it could well be a worry, or it could well be a bit of strategy from Kimi.
Okay.
To try and get the stewards to look at that. And clearly, if there's any issue, any safety issue with the integrity of a wing, then the teams would be very uncomfortable to leave the driver out there. But let's see if we can see exactly what it is. It's the rear end plate. See, the bottom left end plate is broken below. Now, the trailing edge, we'll get Gary to give us a word on this. My understanding is the trailing edge of the rear wing is more a regulation than an actual loading issue. But I don't know if Gary's got his ears on there. What would your thought be as a technical director and seeing that rear wing end plate placard?
Yeah, I mean, what you got to be careful of is they've got an end plate mounted upper wing as well. But as you say, that last part of it, the back sort of, I don't know, 30 centimetres is only just a piece of bodywork, so it could break off. It's not structurally required, but it just depends how far forward that flapping piece is starting.
What would you feel, Gary, if you were sitting there on the pit wall and you'd just seen that on one of your cars? Would you bring it in for inspection, or you just let them race?
Well, first of all, I'd have a very, very good look at it going past here. What I saw on the TV there would have said, okay, I think the structural part of it's okay, and it's just the back piece that's got damage maybe in the start line when somebody touched them up the back, and it's finally just, because of the aerodynamics, it's just flat back and forward enough to crack it.
Okay, well, he's out there still at the moment, is Kobayashi, still running around in 9th place. We're watching Alonso versus Maldonado, 27-year-old Venezuelan Maldonado, who's had some good success at some street circuits in the past. In fact, Monaco last year in his Formula 1 in his first season was his best run, until, of course, he had a bit of a tangle with Lewis Hamilton. Up to that point, he looked as though he was going to be finishing in 6th place in Monaco last year. That would have been his best finish, his best result so far. In fact, he's a 10th position. That was at Spa last year. So if he finishes where he is now, Maldonado, it would certainly be a career best. Button still well ahead, 3.8 seconds ahead of Vettel, then Hamilton and Webber. Then that slight gap back to Alonso. Maldonado still being chased by Perez, who seems to be stuck to his one-stop strategy with some 14 laps to go. It's working at the moment for the Sauber. And there is another world champion, Damon Hill, winner here in Melbourne in 1996 when at the first event.
Well, looking like someone stolen his chips there. He didn't look very happy, did he?
No, that's right, but he has good memories of this place, that's for sure. And I remember that race victory very clearly. Of course, it was a very significant win for Damon as he went on to win the title that year. So, looking at this battle going on, Vettel, Hamilton and Webber. Last year, the Red Bulls would have been disappearing a bit from the McLarens. Webber not so much. Interesting comments from Mark Webber this weekend, David, and perhaps you can comment on them a little bit. Talking about how he's so much happier driving this car than he was last year's car. He struggled with the driving style required with the blown diffusers, where they were using the exhaust gases to create downforce.
Well, every season the cars have different regulations, and the way that you have to drive the car, subtly you adjust your driving style to that. At certain points, some drivers are, more sensitive to it than others, and Mark Webber, if you look at his performance from 2010, where he almost won the World Championship, to 2011, it was like a shadow of his previous performance. It's gone away. He's a lot happier in winter testing, and this has been a strong performance from Mark Webber, crucially getting in front of Sebastian in qualifying without the use of curb, and running pretty much on the same piece of tarmac as they get through this Grand Prix. That wasn't the case for most of the races last year, so this will be helping build his confidence.
So no changes there, but Hamilton set fastest lap. Gary, with that safety car intervention, do we think that anybody's going to need to stop again, or are they going to be very carefully watching the tyre wear now?
No, I think it's just 11 laps to go, and I think you just have to drive the wheels off it. I mean, obviously, the top four were on fresh tyres when the safety car came in, so they're safe and ready to go. Down the back a little bit, Perez is only one. Obviously, he's doing a long run on it, but his lap times are pretty good. So
we've got the Bruno Senna and Massa together, the two Brazilians tangling, Ferrari and Williams, and there's definitely damage on the Ferrari. I think there's damage, I'm not sure, on the Williams.
Well,
yeah, look, their left front suspension.
Damage there. Will he make it round? He's in the gravel. Will this be another safety car scenario? Can he get it out? That was at turn 4. That was the corner where we saw Raikkonen going round the outside of the Sauber earlier. We're going to see the replay here. And this is actually another replay that's in the background there. So you had Massa and Bruno Senna, and as they get up on the curb, they just run together. So, and then they're sort of someone bring a bucket of water to separate them.
Look at that! Yeah, they were absolutely stuck together, welded together as they carried on. And that's the two Brazilians in the race. They managed to tangle with each other. What are you got to do about that? But it looks like they're both out of it, I think. Damage to both cars. We'll see where Massa ends up. Meanwhile, the other Williams is going quickly still, isn't it? And he's only 0.7 behind Alonso, is Maldonado. There he is. And Alonso still got his work cut out to keep this Venezuelan behind him. Maldonado having his best Grand Prix to date. There's no doubt about it.
Great driving from Maldonado. The Williams car performing over the race run. And what do you say? Alonso at this stage of the Grand Prix, he's 3.6 seconds behind Webber. Looks like he's given up that particular hunt. I don't think he'd be too dissatisfied with the 5th place out of the difficulties he had in qualifying, but this is a big moment for Maldonado, and if he sniffs an opportunity, then he'll go for it.
I'll tell you what, if he finishes where he is now, Maldonado in 6th place, he'll get 8 points, which is more than Williams scored throughout last year. So, I mean, that would be a pretty good start to this season, wouldn't it?
And points mean prizes. It's very important where you finish in the Constructors' Championship. And we went down to talk to Williams earlier. We joked we almost needed to take a bus so far down the paddock after the difficult year last year. But and there we see Bruno Senna.
Yeah, well, he's got it back. I'm amazed he's managed to get that car back, but that front suspension's damaged. Now, what are they going to do here?
Well, have a good look round, please.
They are sending him back out. I thought that maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just a puncture. But he's going to try and run for a little longer, and I suppose he can then report back to the team. Button continues to lead by 3.3 seconds from Vettel, Hamilton and Webber as Bruno Senna returns to the fray after damage with Massa earlier.
Just coming out in front of Raikkonen. And actually, there's Massa being pushed into his garage. Extensive front wing damage.
It's a bit difficult when the steering doesn't work to actually get it in the garage.
Yeah, they'll put that up in short stands and wheel it in. But the Williams guy sending Bruno Senna back out. Of course, there's only one in-season test this year, so if the car can physically be driven, you want to get as much information and data during race time as possible. So he's not going to get any points this afternoon, but they're going to learn some valuable information.
Yeah, it might just have been a puncture rather than suspension damage. It's a puncture can often look the same way. On board with Maldonado, the Ferrari's back end of the Ferrari really sliding around a bit there. You can watch it. Let's just see them up into turns 11. Let's listen to how much power he's using through here.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, nice and tidy. Now, what we could be looking at this stage of the Grand Prix is if Ferrari have taken a punt and ran a little bit less fuel for the race start, then they may be in a situation like we saw with Rosberg last year in China, where they just basically don't have enough fuel on board to run it at full engine mode. So we could be seeing a slightly compromised Alonso, because why, as the circuit rubbers in, would he be struggling more than what his performance showed at the beginning of the race? Now, on the counterbalance of that, Williams may have fueled this car up and run the car absolutely to allow them to capitalise in that top 10 qualifying position. You don't take those top 10 qualifying for granted, so that's giving them potentially the advantage here. So what I'm basically trying to say is we may not be seeing full performance Ferrari against full performance Williams. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait until after the race when we can interview these guys and ask, what was the situation at that stage of the race.
Still, Maldonado is keeping in there. There's the bit of the damage from the contact with Senna where they got themselves attached. One of the Ferrari guys just giving it a good old prod. And there is the other Ferrari still out on track, still hopeful of delivering some useful points. I tell you what, Alonso, I know I'm going to speak too soon here, but he has a remarkable finishing record here at Melbourne. He has never failed to finish the race. No DNFs at all. And I'm bound to put a curse on him saying that, of course, but it is a remarkable record, bearing in mind he's been here quite a lot of times over the years, but no DNFs.
Well, just an update on whether we're comparing like for like. We know that Alonso's tyres are 3 laps older than Maldonado's, which is significant. Normally about a 1/10 of a second per lap degradation. So, like for like, Alonso in theory should be running 3/10 a lap slower than the Williams, certainly in terms of tyres.
It's been a quiet race for Paul Di Resta, David. Let's take a look at something, and this is something involving Paul. Has there been a change around there? Yep, Jean-Eric Verne just going past. Daniel Ricciardo not far behind as well. So there has been a change around there. On board with Ricciardo, and then he got past Di Resta as well. So Di Resta's lost 2 places. Struggling a bit, isn't he?
Yeah, this Force India doesn't seem quite as hooked up as it did at this stage last year. Paul scoring points in his debut, which puts him in a very elite group of drivers. But they've lost Hulkenberg early on, and not looking like a point-scoring afternoon for Force India.
No, it's not. But good to see some of the youngsters going well. People like Maldonado. We had a whole number of GP2 champions in the top 10 on the grid today. 5 GP2 champions, former winners of the series that sits just below Formula 1. Maldonado is one of those, and he's showing well here today.
Just looking at the gaps up the front, as we see our race leader there, Jenson Button, very comfortable, 3.7 seconds ahead of Sebastian Vettel, who's only 0.7 of a second in front of Hamilton. Hamilton is in the overtake zone, and we know if anyone's prepared to have a go, Lewis certainly is a supreme overtaker. But as he finished this lap, it actually looked like Mark Webber was getting onto the back of Lewis as well. Let's just look, that's probably about a second. That's 0.8. That's what 0.8 of a second looks like at 170 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's amazing how quick these cars are. Top speeds here at Melbourne, around 190 miles an hour, probably the highest speed in qualifying at least. And slowest corner here, they're still doing about 55 miles an hour. Fastest corner about 145, 150 miles an hour up through the fast chicane. So a lot of variety on this circuit. What's also interesting about this battle is the relative performance between Red Bull and McLaren, and just how close they are. I mean, they've been together for lap after lap. We're in the closing stages of the race. Neither seems to have the advantage. Button was able to make a bit of a break at the restart, but he's running in clean air, and it does bode well for the rest of the season, doesn't it?
It does indeed. We've seen that all the way through the practice sessions, the mix of different cars. covered by less than a second, which is definitely encouraging for the year ahead. Getting into the last few laps of this Grand Prix, local time we're coming up to 6:30. Sun is getting lower and lower, so some of the drivers have complained in the past that visibility gets difficult at this time, and you can see the shadows on the track that are laid down for the trees. It's not really that physical a racetrack when you compare it to somewhere like Malaysia. Hamilton looked like he had a lot of understeer as he came through turn 14. And look, you can see the gap opened up to Vettel there, so Hamilton got a bit of difficulty. Is he getting to the point in these tyres where running in that dirty air that he's going to be under a bit of trouble for Mark Webber? Because look, that gap has visibly opened up to Sebastian Vettel.
In the background, you've still got Alonso running in 5th place, Maldonado in 6th place, Vettel, setting fastest lap on that last lap. You know what, Red Bull, coming into this race, Red Bull have led 23 consecutive races, 23 consecutive Grand Prix. Well, they haven't led a lap yet in this one, but Vettel is looking fast in second.
Well, there's a great battle here between Rosberg, Kobayashi and Raikkonen. And you can see Raikkonen with his rear wing open there. He's in the DRS zone, but it doesn't seem like the Mercedes is able to hold on with its tyres as well. And we're going to see a pass here.
Rosberg, Kobayashi.
Yeah, but he locks up and runs wide, so Rosberg will cut back across him again and makes the pass back again into turn 14. And that's we're seeing it from in-car. So Kobayashi, you know, we know he loves to have a go. He throws it down the inside, but a little bit surprised that the corner arrived a bit quicker than expected. Keeps it on the tarmac, but Rosberg comes back. He used his KERS as he came out of turn 13. And that's allowing Raikkonen to get onto the back of him. And look at Raikkonen now. Yeah, so Rosberg started to open out that gap again, but Raikkonen looking for a way into 9th place.
So can Raikkonen find a way past the Sauber? The Sauber with Ferrari power. Remember, of course, the Lotus with Renault power. And behind Raikkonen is Jean-Eric Vergne, who, you know, is only 1 place outside scoring points on his Grand Prix debut. As you said, Di Resta managed it here last year. But Jean-Eric Vergne there in the Toro Rosso is ahead of his teammate. It's a massive battle between the two of them this year. He was sliding there, though. There he is, the young Frenchman. And if he could get 1 more place, he would score points on his debut as well, which would be just a brilliant start to his Formula 1 career.
Well, he's been chased down by Ricciardo, his teammate, last lap around. He was quicker. This lap he's quicker as well. You can see he's visibly closing. I think that is one of the really interesting inter-team battles, because there's so much at stake for those young rookie drivers. You know, literally, you know, the Toro Rosso system that cut Buemi, it cut Alguersuari out last year, and they both did respectable jobs, more than respectable jobs. So they know the pressure's on to perform every weekend, as we see Mark Webber honing in on the back of Lewis Hamilton. He would love to get a big result. Currently he's in his best finishing position,
but a podium is tantalisingly close.
It's so close. I've got to think that Mark will go for it.
Well, you know, to finish top 3 here, I was going to say to get his first podium here, but actually when he finished 5th here for Minardi back in 2002, they stuck him on the podium. They were so celebrating the fact that he'd got a Minardi to 5th, which was a bit of a miracle at the time. They put him on the podium, but he's never finished top 3 in this race, and that's how close he is.
Right, what we're learning here is, once again, like we saw earlier on the Grand Prix, for whatever reason, Lewis Hamilton's not able to use his tyres as well as Jenson Button. And once again, as you see there, Vettel's just in the fastest lap of the race at 29.5. That's only a tenth quicker than what Jenson Button did the last lap around, but crucially Hamilton was half a second slower than that, and we know that Webber's right in. As you just see Jenson passing him, Marussia lapping him.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, the Red Bulls are struggling in the DRS zone to get that advantage, aren't they?
They are, but we could see Lewis Hamilton really snaking around on the track surface there coming out of turn 3. So is he right at the point of burning out on these tyres?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. We're on lap 55 out of 58. We're running out of time. Gary, just as we watch this battle, what are your thoughts? You know, we're in the latter part of this race. We didn't quite know what to expect about the relative performance of all these teams. Give us a little bit of thought on what you've seen today.
Well, I think it's a very impressive performance by McLaren. Obviously, they just got caught up in that safety car, so Hamilton lost out. But Red Bull, good recovery, up to 2nd and 4th at the minute, and running very competitively with McLaren. Shows that, they got their homework done last night a little bit, and obviously made the car a bit better. Ferrari, I think the 5th place will be a surprise for them. As you know, as Stefano said before the race, you know, the qualifying position wasn't a true Ferrari position. I think probably 5th to 8th was probably the true Ferrari position. But great racing, and you know, very close, obviously. And that's really what we want. Lots of different chassis.
Yeah, it is fabulous, isn't it, to see all the different cars fighting against one another. 3 laps remaining, Button's advantage 3.2 seconds, Webber only 0.6 behind Hamilton as they came across the line. Let's just remind you, we're just looking inside the pit of Bruno Senna, so that car was damaged in the incident. We thought it might well have been. He tangled with Felipe Massa. Let's quickly remind you how this race began. It started with the McLarens on the front row, Hamilton on pole, but Jenson Button made a better start and just got into the first corner ahead, and then gradually eased away and sort of pulled out a gap over Hamilton, who never seemed to have quite the same level of pace. Meanwhile, the Red Bulls had work to do because they'd qualified on the 3rd row of the grid. Romain Grosjean, who qualified 3rd, unfortunately he went out very, very early on in an incident up at turn 13, so we lost Grosjean from the equation. Vettel gradually worked his way through the order and, as Gary Anderson told us a moment ago, gained under the safety car, which came out when we had the Caterham stopped on the main straight. Schumacher had been going well, but he had gearbox problems, so we lost him from it all as well. And Rosberg has been a bit disappointing in the latter part of the race. He's dropped down to 8th position, so Mercedes looked strong early on. They have faded away and Schumacher out. Other retirements in this race, Hulkenberg, Kovalainen, and of course Massa and Senna after their tangle, but no such problems for these guys up front. It's Button leading, and he's just set a new fastest lap again. 129.1 from Jenson Button. Vettel in 2nd place, Hamilton in 3rd, and it's Hamilton of all of these who's got to keep his focus here to keep Webber behind him. Blue flags as the Marussia is just up there, getting passed by the Ferrari of Alonso. Maldonado still tracking that Ferrari, never quite been in a position to actually attack though.
This is great stuff. The battle's going on, Webber and Hamilton, and then we've got Maldonado and Alonso, and it wouldn't take much for Maldonado to get himself in a position to have a go. And what, you know, you could say he wants to lose. Well, 6th place is to lose, but this is a remarkable drive from this young driver. Alonso, also a remarkable drive. As,
Rosberg.
Rosberg's been overtaken, has he, by Kobayashi.
Yeah, so he's doing what we've known him for in the past. He didn't see so much of this from Kobayashi last year, but he's really going for it today.
Well, the Sauber seems to be performing a lot better. And once again, it does seem like Mercedes are working the tyres a lot harder. Great qualifying from Mercedes, but it does seem that they're
is
not
it
able
Perez?
to get as much out.
So, no, look, there's Kobayashi, sorry, we got that wrong. Kobayashi and Raikkonen battling. So I think what happened there was that Rosberg got alongside Perez, but Perez fought him off in the end, so slight mistake. But both Saubers are going well here. They're running 7th and 9th, so it still is the case. The Sauber is better, although they did finish top 10 last year here in Australia, only to be thrown out on that technicality. So let's see what happens. Raikkonen still attacking, and it's quite an enticing prospect, Kobayashi versus Raikkonen, but Jenson Button is now on his final lap.
Well, you've got Raikkonen, he's the predator. He's also the prey, as he's being chased there by Jean-Eric Verne, looking to try and pick up points in his first Grand Prix, closely followed by his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. Great qualifying yesterday from the young Australian.
Yeah, very impressive, and he's hopefully going to finish his first home race as well, Ricciardo. Don't do anything silly now, Daniel. I know you want to beat your teammate.
Well, something silly. I think he might just pull a pass on his teammate. Well, I'm not sure that's inspired if he does.
Yeah, as long as he gets it done cleanly, because the rivalry between these two will be massive this year. And Ricciardo, on his home turf, wants to get past Jean-Eric Verne. Neither of them in the...
Oh, and that's Maldonado.
That's... It's the Williams and Maldonado who was running in 6th place.
That's on the run round turn 8, I believe, round the back of the circuit. Very unusual place to have an incident. What's gone on there?
He was behind Alonso. What happened?
Oh, he got on the artificial grass coming out of turn 7, and as he's corrected, here he is, down through turn 6, gets on the throttle, out onto the artificial grass, and just loses the back end of the car. And that's why these cars go through such stringent crash testing.
Button wins! Button wins in Australia amidst all the drama on the last lap. Vettel is second, Hamilton finishes third, Mark Webber finishes in fourth place. Let's see the rest of them come through. But Jenson Button takes his third win here in Melbourne. Rosberg in trouble. Rosberg,
he's got damage to his car by the looks of it. Look at his steering wheel, is actually left hand down.
Yeah, so
did they come together?
There's Jenson's dad. Oh, and what delight there is down there for those guys. Look at all this. Raikkonen is going to come through. Has he got past Perez? Yes, he has. And Perez under pressure from both Toro Rossos and Paul Di Resta trying to get in there. And there are points at stake across the line. Raikkonen 7th, Perez 8th, Ricciardo 9th, and Di Resta 10th. Verne finishes 11th. Daniel Ricciardo, the Australian, gets in the points on his first home race. And Webber also gets his best ever result here.
Okay, Jenson, that was fantastic. Great race, great job.
Welcome 2009. Oh, fantastic. What a great way to start the year, guys. Seriously, fantastic. You know, shows what a winter does, doesn't it? The car is beautiful and she's quick. Thanks, guys.
Brilliant stuff from Jenson Button. And you know, David, you know what he's done? He's matched you in wins now. It's his 13th career victory.
Well, thoroughly deserved. Fantastic victory there from Jenson Button. You've got to love how relaxed he sounded on the radio. He's saying, seriously, guys, that was a great afternoon. As if he would have been joking about it.
Off Maldonado, he was close to his best ever Formula One result. Williams were on target for points. Look at it again.
Gets on the power out over the back of the curb,
but it doesn't look that wide. I don't quite. It doesn't look like he really goes over the curb big time.
Yeah, but at this stage of the Grand Prix, the tyres have lost a lot of their gauge, and he may have deployed KERS. He may have opened the DRS.
Yep.
And here we're going to see a replay with Rosberg, whose car's actually stopped just down past the start-finish. Rosberg was classified 12th, so did he have a coming together with one of the Saubers?
Perez he was dicing with. Ooh, did they tangle? Well, no, he gets through there. Now, maybe the Sauber's still there, is it? No, don't know what happened there.
I don't know what was going on there. But
this was the last lap, and Ricciardo battling away up front.
A lock up there, and he gets wide on the power, not allowed him to come back.
Verne had got past him, Ricciardo got back past him. It was all going on between the Toro Rossos, but Ricciardo ended up 9th and Verne finished 11th. So Ricciardo's taken the first honours there between those two teammates, that's for sure. And John is saying he's
saying his heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that.
Stressful stuff. But McLaren, you know, for McLaren, this is their 6th victory in Melbourne. That matches Ferrari's record here as the most wins that we've had in Melbourne, and it's their 11th victory in Australia in all in World Championship events if you include the Adelaide races. So McLaren are definitely the winning team in Australia. What a result for them. Their 176th Grand Prix win. But it wasn't a 1-2, which we thought it might be at one stage.
Yeah, that was the surprise. Jenson Button went for it at the start, and then thereafter, Lewis Hamilton just doesn't seem to be able to make his tyres go quite as far as Jenson. And in the end, safety car, spot of good fortune. The point at which the safety car came out, that allowed Sebastian Vettel to jump Hamilton on the racetrack rather than having to try and overtake him.
So the result, Jenson Button taking victory from Sebastian Vettel in second, coming up from 6th on the grid. Hamilton was third, ahead of Webber, Alonso for Ferrari, and then Kobayashi, Raikkonen, Perez, Ricciardo, then Di Resta, and further down the list, quite a list of retirements from this Australian Grand Prix. Well, down there in Parc Fermé, Sebastian Vettel didn't lead a lap, and as I mentioned earlier, that's the first time in 23 races Red Bull haven't led a lap, but ultimately it was still a good result for Sebastian coming from 6th on the grid. Lewis Hamilton then finishing in 3rd position, and no doubt he'll be a little disappointed, yet it is a good start to the season for him. And Jenson Button starting as he did in 2009 when he won this race when he was driving for Brawn, and guess what, he went on to win the championship that year.
That was great racing from Jenson out front. Was able to push, and after the safety car, pulled 2.5 seconds within the first lap. So completely dominant and in control out front. But the good news is the amount of different cars that have managed to get into the top 10. Good news for Ferrari that Alonso's had a strong comeback after a difficult day. good news for the Saubers, of course. Force India's getting a point just at the end, stealing a point, Paul di Resta. Those 3 cars covered by 0.1 of a second. And send out the kisses, Jensen. Melbourne loves you, and you love Melbourne. 3rd victory around this track.
Yeah. He's only 1 short of Michael Schumacher now around this track. So Michael's had 4 wins here. Jensen now on 3. You're still on 2.
I think that will stay.
I don't think that's going to change.
That won't change. Although I did actually win the McGann race earlier today.
Well, there we go. Can we add that in? Yeah.
No trophy for that.
And the first win you had here was actually the first ever Mercedes engine win too, wasn't it? So you kicked the whole thing off, and the Mercedes partnership with McLaren still very successful.
Indeed. Now, that's great. I'll maybe just listen to them. I'm not hearing too much now, but what I was saying is that's great to see Sebastian. Big smile on his face. You know, no big lip because he's not getting to win it. Hi, Mum.
That's nice,
indeed, yeah.
Especially on Mother's Day.
Fantastic.
McLaren Mercedes leading the Constructors' Championship on 40. They've got a 10-point advantage over Red Bull.
Tell this to Charlie because I might forget the next race. And there was a yellow flag in the park.
Yeah, some yellow flag thing.
On the outside of the circle, yeah. It was just a single wave. Yeah, when was that? He just stood there, wasn't he? Yeah, no, he was running. He was standing when you were there.
There we go, Peter. I think they're saying there's someone on the track.
Someone with a yellow or something. I don't know, yeah.
And someone running.
Slightly strange. Some 850 marshals here this weekend. I think it is, looking after the course. Pretty huge number. Guys coming through now. They'll be heading up towards the podium, of course. Yeah, he's loving it, isn't he? Making the most of it.
Yeah, I think a little bit of a play on the number 1, the bendy finger that we've seen so much from Sebastian Vettel. He is a bit straighter, Jensen's.
Of course, he had a victory towards the end of last year in Suzuka, which was another fine victory ahead of Vettel on that occasion.
He's just matured through his career into a very rounded racing driver. It just seems to suit him so well. These Pirelli tyres, and having to manage the changing track.
There he is. He's done this twice before in Melbourne, but I bet it feels just as good every time.
I would suspect that one feels the best yet because
Jenson Button celebrating victory here in Australia. Just the 5 races since his last victory in Japan. And what a start to the 2012 season it is. Presented the trophy by the Premier of Victoria, the state of Victoria, which has hosted this Grand Prix, of course, since 1996. And now the trophy for Doug McKinnon of McLaren gets the trophy for the constructors. Yeah, lovely steering wheel.
I think it's a replica of a Brabham.
Yeah.
Brabham steering wheel.
Okay. Ron Walker is the chairman of the Australian Grand Prix Corporation, making the presentation to Sebastian Vettel. Ron Walker, who really got this race up and running when it first began in Melbourne. He's the former Lord Mayor of Melbourne as well. And 3rd place goes to Lewis Hamilton, of course. That safety car certainly didn't do him any favours. It worked particularly well for Sebastian Vettel.
For Sebastian Vettel, who made places from the start, and for Jenson Button, who made all the running and wins in Australia. What a race for Button. Let's go back down to Simon and Damon in the paddock.